In spot number 10 is the drama between Caitlyn Jenner and Ellen DeGeneres. It was back in 2015 when Caitlyn went on Ellen's show for an interview and it ended with an ongoing feud between them. During the interview, Ellen asked her opinion on same-sex marriage, and Caitlyn said that there was a time in her life that she did not support it, but now she does. Ellen fired back immediately though and made it seem like Caitlyn was saying that she does not support the LGBTQ+ community. The tension between them seemed to go past the show because Ellen talked about it on the Howard Stern show. She told Howard that Caitlyn was unfairly passing judgment about gay people and same-sex marriage. Caitlyn later came out with her side of the story and said she was not happy that Ellen painted her in that light. She claimed that she talked to Ellen on the phone prior to going on the show in the first place and that they already discussed her changing opinion on same-sex marriage. So when Ellen flipped the switch on her during the live interview, Caitlyn was really upset. Cruising into number 9 is the Wendy Williams lip drama. She caused a big stir online after she talked about the Golden Globes on her talk show. It was because she started making comments about the awards show and began talking about the Oscar-nominated actor Joaquin Phoenix. But while talking about him, she mocked the scar that he has above his lip. She said that when he shaves his mustache, he has a hairline fracture, and then she started demonstrating with her hand how his lip scar looks like a cleft lip. People were furious and said she was insensitive not only to the actor but also those who have cleft lips. Even Cher was furious and had a lot to say about it on Twitter. One of her tweets said an apology does not make up for what she did, and the other one said that she should be fired for making fun of something that is very painful for some people. Wendy did issue an apology following all the backlash, in case you're wondering, but is that enough? I don't know. She still has her job, so I guess so. In spot number 8, we have the time when Paris Hilton called out David Letterman. I did an entire list of celebrities who tried to warn us about David Letterman, so there is a handful of scandals that I could have used, but the one with Paris is what sparked the majority of them to be revealed in the first place. In 2020, Paris did a vulnerable documentary called This Is Paris, where she opened up about different times that she was belittled during interviews by other people in the industry, David being one of them. One video clip surfaced online showing him bugging her about her time in jail, which happened years before. He kept making very insensitive jokes about it, and even after she asked him to stop, he wouldn't. Paris revealed that he was purposely trying to humiliate her because he agreed not to bring up the jail thing before she even went on the show in the first place. After the clip went viral, a handful of other clips with different female celebrities surfaced, showing him belittling them and also being sexually inappropriate towards them. Taking over number 7 is Steve Harvey's note. He was making headlines in 2017 when a memo he sent off to his staff members was leaked online, showing him in a different light. People are used to seeing his very kind and goofy side, but apparently he is more entitled when he is off camera. The memo was sent from Harvey to his staff and basically told them all not to approach him. It said, "Do not come to my dressing room unless invited. Do not approach me while I'm in the makeup chair unless I ask to speak with you directly. Do not take offense to the new way of doing business." Turns out he was revamping things for season 5 of his show, and with a new crew, he wanted new rules. After the memo went viral, he decided to bail on the wrap party for his own show. Probably because the staff all were terrified to even look at him. What do you guys think? Does he have a right to say that in a staff memo? Like, do you think it was too much? Do you think it's valid? Let me know. At number 6, we have James Corden facing backlash for allegedly being racist. This scandal caused a huge debate because some people felt he should be cancelled while others saw no issue with what he was doing. I will let you be your own judge. If you haven't seen his show, he does a segment called Spill Your Guts or Fill Your Guts. He fills the table with disgusting foods like cow tongue, different bugs, 1,000-year-old eggs, sardine smoothies, things like that. If his celebrity guest does not want to answer the question, they have to eat whatever is in front of them. He's been doing it for years, but this year he started taking heat after people said some of the foods that he refers to as disgusting are very common in Asian cultures. People said that the segment is culturally offensive and insensitive because many Asian Americans are consistently bullied and mocked for their native foods. James was quick to apologize though and be very understanding, saying that he will not do the segment and he will make appropriate changes to his show. We've made it halfway and we have Megyn Kelly vs. Jane Fonda. In September 2017, what started out as a normal interview led to some ongoing tension between these two ladies. They were having a normal interview which seemed to be going well until Megyn started asking Jane about aging and plastic surgery. It seemed to strike a nerve with her because she became irritated immediately and did not want to talk about it. She fired back at her saying, "We really want to talk about that now?" Then she changed the subject and began talking about her movie, Our Souls at Night. The interview just wasn't the same after that. You could feel like some awkward tension between them. Jane later joked about it months later on the Today Show, and Megyn replied by saying the actress is fixated on the exchange and said it was part of Jane's poor me routine. Things just seemed to get even worse from there. Just went on a spiral and a rant, and it's just not good. Rolling into spot number 4, we have Sharon Osbourne gets fired. Well, she was forced to step away, so you could say she kind of quit. Things turned sour quick when she went on the show and defended Piers Morgan, who gave his opinion about Meghan Markle's big interview regarding the royal family. His opinion was that he didn't believe Meghan's very serious claims. Sharon defended him, saying that he has a right to speak about his views and opinion, but that just caused issues for her because it came off like she was kind of agreeing with him. She tried to defend herself, but it ended up turning into a very heated argument between her and one of her other show hosts. The show had to cut to commercial and bleep out a bunch of F-bombs because the fight got so intense. The show was on a hiatus before it was announced that they would be moving forward without her. The show's statement said that her behavior towards her co-hosts did not align with their values for a respectful workplace. With that being said, at number 3 is Piers Morgan gets fired. You already heard the gist of what happened, but there was a lot of drama that led to him quitting the show, but media outlets say he was forced to step away. I feel like that's a nice way of saying, you're fired, I'm gonna give you opportunity to quit, if not, you're fired. He has been adored on the talk show Good Morning Britain, but then ITV announced they were getting a lot of complaints about Piers and they had to investigate them. Turns out the show received 41,000 complaints after Piers said he did not believe a word that Meghan Markle said in her Oprah Winfrey interview about the royal family. If you missed that very shocking interview, Meghan revealed how her mental health was negatively affected by the royal family and brought up certain incidents which were extremely racist and insensitive. Piers was open about the fact that he personally did not believe her claims. He ended up walking away from the show, which seemed to be a mutual agreement with the network either way, because they could not defend or protect his comments. Moving on to number 2, we have Jimmy Kimmel's insensitive comment. During one of his episodes in 2013, he offended the Chinese community around the world after making an insensitive joke. During one of his segments, a child suggested that harming everyone in China as a solution to dealing with America's growing debt. Jimmy responded to it by saying, "That's an interesting idea." The statement enraged a lot of people, even if it was meant to be a joke or sarcasm, and people online were demanding an apology from him. Eventually, Jimmy released a statement saying, "I thought it was obvious that I didn't agree with that statement, but apparently it wasn't. So I just want to say I am sorry, I apologize, it was certainly not my intent to upset anyone." I feel like he just chose to use sarcasm at a very bad time. Like, sarcasm either hits or it misses. Earning the number 1 spot is the feud between Dakota Johnson and Ellen DeGeneres. This has gone down as one of the most iconic and cringeworthy moments in talk show history. In 2019, a feud sparked between the two of them after Dakota went on her show to do an interview. At the time, they had already had this ongoing debate on whether or not Ellen had been invited to her birthday party. In 2018, Dakota admitted she did not invite Ellen because she didn't know if she would want to be invited, so in 2019 she did invite her. But Ellen did not show up to the party and also did not give any explanation why. So when Dakota went on her talk show, Ellen brought it up and accused her of not inviting her to her birthday again. The tension was immediately super uncomfortable as Dakota starts bringing other people into it. She said, I quote, "Actually, no, that's not the truth, Ellen. Ask everybody. Ask Jonathan, your producer." She literally then points to the producer and calls him out during the interview. The producer revealed that she was in fact invited, and then it was super awkward because Ellen didn't even say why she didn't go, and then the audience just had to sit there and watch the whole thing unfold.
At number 10, Piers Morgan. I know that we as humans are bound to mess up sometimes, but there's no excuse for being overly critical and mean to another person, because clearly it can have its consequences, like how Piers Morgan lost his job due to the rude comments that he made on TV. Piers had a lot to say after Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's interview with Oprah. Like many others, Piers was surprised at what was said during the interview, but he took some of the information shared in the interview and used it as hateful fuel that inevitably came back to bite him. During the interview, Meghan Markle opened up about her mental health and how it was affected being part of the royal family, saying that there was once a point after marrying into the family that she wanted to take her own life. Piers spoke about this on air of Good Morning Britain, and he said that he, quote, didn't believe a word that she said. After Piers made those and a handful of other harsh comments, he started to face massive backlash from all sides, as people said that his comments on Meghan's mental health were diminishing and disrespectful. The studio he worked for, as well as Piers himself, started receiving harsh comments, and so Piers actually left his position at Good Morning Britain. He was, in a way, fired from his job, but he decided to pull the plug himself, I guess, to make him seem like the bigger person. He has since refused to apologize, and since nobody wants to work with him after all this drama, it could be that his career is finished now. At number 9, Megyn Kelly. Journalist Megyn Kelly once had her own show called Megyn Kelly Today, but after facing a scandal, her show was cancelled by the network, effectively firing her from her job. This scandal all started when Megyn defended wearing blackface at Halloween on her morning show, where she said, quote, when I was a kid, that was okay just as long as you were dressing as a character. Even though she tried to apologize for her remarks, the network just didn't want to take any more risks with Megyn over fears that this would reflect badly on the company, so Megyn was fired and her show was cancelled. At number 8, Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons is certainly someone with little or no filter when it comes to his words and actions. He's an outlandish guy with a lot of energy, and so sometimes when he gets passionate or heated, then he can go off the rails a bit, and that can come back to bite him, as it resulted in him losing his job with Fox. At one point, the singer was a Fox favorite, making regular appearances on their programming where they would discuss hot topics in the world and would share their opinions on things. They seemed to really like him and enjoyed having him on their talk show, but after causing a stir at a meeting with Fox and making some crude comments towards some of the other staff members, Gene was banned for life and was fired from their show. Some of the things that Gene said to some women at the network got leaked, and it made the studio look bad, so they just had to let him go. In this day and age, making comments like that is sure to get you in some serious trouble, and for a celebrity, that can never be good because that can cost you your entire career, so Fox just had to save their own butts and had to get rid of the problem at hand. At number 7, Adrien Brody. Adrien Brody is a super successful actor, but after a scandal while hosting Saturday Night Live in 2003, his potential hosting career began and ended all in one night. When Adrien was hired to host SNL one evening, one of the tasks he was given that night was introducing the musical guest for the evening. Seems like a pretty simple enough task, but he still managed to mess it up. On the night that Adrien was hosting, the musical guest turned out to be Sean Paul, and Adrien saw this as the perfect opportunity to introduce Sean in an interesting way, to say the least. When it came down to announcing Sean's performance, Adrien came out dressed in fake dreadlocks and sporting a Jamaican accent. His bit was called out and was seen as offensive and uncalled for, as he went completely off script to do this bit, but no one found it funny in the slightest.
Man, Jamaica, man, you know, Rastafari, you got the whole family in the house, me got Sean Peter, you got Sean Paul, you got Sean Mary.
Because this was such an epic and controversial fail, the actor was subsequently fired and banned from coming back on the show. He faced a lot of backlash that hurt his image for a while, but clearly he's bounced back since then. At number 6, Jenny Slate. The first day at a new job is always a very stressful one. There's a lot of pressure to do well and start to fit into your new work environment, so usually employers forgive any kind of minor mistakes, but for comedian Jenny Slate, the mistake that she made on her first day was a bit of a doozy, and she ended up getting fired for it. Back in 2009, during her first performance as a cast member on the show, Jenny got the chance to perform one of the sketches that she wrote. She knew the bit like the back of her hand, or at least she thought she did, because when she went to go say one of her lines, she accidentally switched up one of the words and dropped an accidental F-bomb in its place. We all know that on network television, especially on talk shows like this, having adult language is a serious no-no, and when Jenny messed up, it just was not good for her at all. After that night, Jenny just struggled to fit the show's vibe, at least that's what she went on to say. The F-bomb, combined with her other behind-the-scenes stuff, caused her to get fired from one of the most famous shows on TV, and that definitely held her back in the comedy world for a little while, but clearly not forever. At number 5, Alec Baldwin. Back in 2013, Alec Baldwin became the host of a late-night talk show called Up Late with Alec Baldwin on MSNBC. But his career as a talk show host was very short-lived, as the show was promptly cancelled after just 5 episodes because Alex landed himself in a scandal that got him fired from the network. Alec had been exposed for getting into a heated brawl with paparazzi, where he went on a bit of a homophobic rant, which, as you can imagine, made Alec as well as the network look bad. Luckily for him, the only thing that really took a beating was his late-night career, since since his acting career remained relatively steady after this scandal. He got lucky that he only got fired from one job and not all of them. At number 4, Leah Remini. Actress Leah Remini, known for her work on sitcoms like The King of Queens and Kevin Can Wait, was also a host on the talk show The Talk, but that career was pretty short-lived because she just didn't mesh well with her fellow co-hosts. In an interview with Howard Stern, Leah talked about how she was fired from the show because, quote, she refused to keep her mouth shut. Leah said that she was just doing what she thought was right for her on the show, but the producers thought differently and this led to her losing her job. Her career still remained intact after being let go from the show though, so things certainly could have been worse for the actress. We just know that she might not be invited to be a talk show host again anytime soon. At number 3, Charles Rocket. Between 1980 and 1981, SNL seemed to be on its way out, despite having been one of the biggest shows on TV. This all came after there were changes in staff, and this caused some drama because much of the cast weren't happy with the new changes being put in place. Because of this seemingly controversial change, much of the original cast of the show left, leading the new producer to have to rehire a brand new cast. This was great for new up-and-coming comedians because it gave new people new opportunities, but it also made others lose everything they worked for. Comedian Charles Rocket was one cast member who had their career destroyed on the show after he dropped an F-bomb during a skit. The comedian was closing out the show when he spoke some adult language, and since this is a huge no-no, he got reprimanded for it, and it caused him as well as a handful of others to get fired from the show. So he not only got himself fired, but many other cast and crew members as well, greatly affecting a lot of careers. At number 2, Ellen. Now I know you guys are gonna head into the comments right now and say, well, Ellen didn't get fired, and I know that. But she did kind of fire herself when she announced that she would be ending her show. She's laying herself off because she's taking away her own job. Last year in 2020, we watched the comedian and talk show host fall rapidly from grace as allegation after allegation came out, painting her as a nightmare to work with, among other things. She faced so much backlash for months for things like the treatment of her staff, her comments about lockdown, and the Black Lives Matter movement. Because of the events of last year, she lost a lot of credibility and respect in the industry, and her show lost a lot of ratings and advertisers as well, leading to her making the decision to end her talk show after so many years. So yeah, no one officially fired her, but she kind of just fired herself. And finally, at number 1, Sharon Osbourne. Talk show host Sharon Osbourne faced a lot of backlash a few months ago after making comments about Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. Sharon and her former co-host Cheryl Underwood got into a heated argument surrounding Piers Morgan's remarks about Meghan Markle. During this feud, Sharon backed up some of Piers's comments about Meghan's mental health, and this really frustrated a lot of people because many felt as though what was being said was going a little too far. As a result of the remarks that Sharon made, she was called a racist, and a number of other accusations came out about how she's used various slurs in the past when talking about her other co-hosts on the show. As a result of this, the network she worked for launched an internal investigation to look into the allegations against Sharon, and it all ended with Sharon being let go from the show. At number 10, Vivica A. Fox. You know, you don't always have to like everybody. It's okay not to be the biggest fan of someone, but for the sake of appearances, it might be a good idea to at least pretend like this person doesn't bother you. This could be extra good advice for celebrities as well. Because Hollywood is essentially one big show, having beefs with people isn't always the best thing for you, and watching two people who hate each other try to have a conversation can be painful as well. Take for example the bad blood between Vivica A. Fox and Jimmy Kimmel. To start, these two celebrities weren't the biggest fans of each other to begin with, but when the actress was on Jimmy Kimmel Live back in 2005, their bad blood started to really boil, and it led to the actress being banned from the show. The actress was on the show to promote her movie Missing, but things didn't go as smoothly as planned because as Jimmy made a joke about one of Vivica's friends, it made her upset and she ended up storming off the set, leaving Jimmy to finish the segment without his guest. Later on, he said that Vivica was one guest that he would never have back on the show. At number 9, Bill Hicks. Many times in Hollywood, we see people get in trouble for being too controversial. It's basically the backbone of cancel culture. Well, here's an example of someone being banned from a talk show for being so controversial that their segment was scrapped entirely. Comedian Bill Hicks made a number of appearances on Letterman between 1984 and 1993, but his 12th appearance on the show was scrapped after it was deemed too controversial to be aired. After that, a ban was issued. According to the comedian, Letterman as well as the audience didn't seem to have many issues with his set, but it was the show's executives who had the whole thing scrapped. This statement has been debated by some because a lot of people still took offense to some of the topics the comedian was discussing. Unfortunately, the comedian never got a chance to redeem himself on the show as he passed away a short time later. At number 8, Madonna. It seems as though there's a good chunk of people who really don't like Madonna. There could be 1.5 million reasons why she and others do not always get along, but the bottom line here is that not everyone wants to be friends with the singer, especially Piers Morgan. There seemed to be some kind of one-sided beef with the singer that frankly frankly I don't think she cares about too much, but Piers on the other hand had a lot to say about her. Morgan said that Madonna was banned from his program because she is, quote, boring and annoying. He also went on to say, quote, Madonna and I, we've never really seen eye to eye. There was a bread roll throwing incident in London in the mid-90s. There was an incident at a hotel in the south of France at the Cannes Film Festival involving a photographer and a bodyguard. There's been an incident involving a pub owned by her recently departed husband Guy Ritchie, where my brother was the manager, end quote. If you thought he was done with his commentary on the singer, you thought wrong. Piers also said that Madonna was too vegan for TV. Whatever that means. Either way, Madonna never responded to all of Piers' comments about her, so again, I think she remained pretty unfazed by the ban that he had put in place, but clearly the TV host had some pent-up aggression there. At number 7, Joan Rivers. Apparently, late-night TV host Johnny Carson and Joan Rivers had so much beef that he not only banned the comedian from his show, but he also refused to speak to her for the rest of his life. When Carson became the host of The Tonight Show in 1962, Joan was starting to rise to fame for her comedy. She and Carson became a pretty dynamic duo as she appeared in his late night show almost 100 times. She was hired as a writer and even became a guest host when Carson was away, but in the mid-80s that's when things started to turn bad as Joan was upset that NBC never offered her a long-term contract. When talks of Carson's retirement began, there was a list of potential candidates of who would replace him, and to her astonishment, Joan wasn't on that list. The silver lining there was that Fox later contacted her about having her own late night show, and she jumped at the opportunity. This made Johnny really mad because he felt like he was almost being blindsided by the whole thing. This caused them to have a pretty big falling out, which led to Joan being banned from her former friend's show. When speaking out about the drama between them, Joan went on to say, quote, I think he really felt because I was a woman that I was his, that I wouldn't leave him. I know this sounds very warped, but I don't understand otherwise what was going on. For years I thought that maybe he liked me better than the others, but I think that it was a question of I found you and you're my property. He didn't like that as a woman I went up against him, end quote. At number 6, Kelsey Grammer. I feel like when a celebrity asks for something specific, it should be given to them. I'm not talking about anything material like demanding a cup of ice chips or something. I mean a specific request in reference to the way that they are treated. For actor Kelsey Grammer, he made a very specific request when doing an interview with Piers Morgan, and when that request wasn't honored, there was a falling out that led to the actor being banned from the show. When the actor made a guest appearance on Piers Morgan Tonight back in 2012, he requested that a picture of his ex-wife not be shown. He was willing to answer questions about her, but just didn't want to have a photo of her be aired. Well, Piers didn't honor that request, and when a photo of his ex-wife was shown, Kelsey stormed off set. The actor's publicist said that Piers had to take accountability for his actions because Kelsey was so mad about the situation, but instead, Piers barred the actor from his show. That doesn't really seem like the right thing to do in that kind of situation, but okay. At number 5, Jackie Mason. I'm sure we are all aware of how sensitive TV networks are about what kinds of things get aired. Saying some kind of adult word can cause some serious consequences, but what about hand gestures? Well, it turns out that those are also against the rules, and someone had their whole career ended because of it. Comedian Jackie Mason had been working on the Ed Sullivan Show for a bit back in the day, and it made him pretty successful. He was given a contract for 6 appearances, which was set to earn him around $45,000, which is more like $350,000 in today's money, since this all happened back in the mid-60s. Either way, it was a very well-paying job for only having to do 6 appearances. Anyway, his entire contract was essentially ripped up after he got into some trouble for flipping the bird on stage. Jackie was playing off one of the stage managers who was making gestures with his fingers to indicate how much time he had left, but he went a little too far. As part of his little joke, he pointed his finger around the room saying, quote, here's a finger for you, and a finger for you, and a finger for you, end quote. This kind of behavior was not allowed, and so he was booted off the show and subsequently banned. At number 4, Artie Lang. When you're a guest on someone's show, the expectation for celebrities is that they stay alert, engaging, and on their best behavior. For comedian Artie Lang, it seems as though he didn't follow through with that unwritten rule and he got banned because of it. Lang had been struggling with substance abuse, and though he had appeared on Conan O'Brien's show a number of times, he ended up getting banned because the producer thought that he was under the influence of some kind of substance on his last appearance, so they told him that he wouldn't be welcome back on the show until he was clean and could prove it. The studio didn't want to risk anything if Artie kept coming back while he was still using, and so they did it for his own good as well as to save their own image as well. At number 3, Howie Mandel. If you watched America's Got Talent, then you know that Howie Mandel and Piers Morgan were judges together. Through the time that they worked together, Howie was known to play pranks on Piers, like using fart machines on him and setting up vending machine blockades. Although Howie thought that this was all in good fun, Piers on the other hand wasn't impressed with his co-workers' antics, and even going so far as to call Howie the quote, most annoying man that he's ever met. End quote. Piers didn't like Howie so much that he ended up adding him to the list of celebrities who he had banned from his show. There was some bad blood there, but honestly, after learning about how many people Piers Morgan seems to have beef with, this ban honestly doesn't even surprise me in the slightest. At number 2, Gilbert Gottfried. This ban has to be one of the most pointless bans I have ever heard of because it really wasn't necessary at all. Howard Stern banned Gilbert Gottfried from his show simply because the comedian went on another show. I know, I don't get it either. There wasn't even any bad blood between them. When Gottfried got cancelled after making insensitive tweets about the devastating tsunami that hit Japan in 2011, Howard even came to his defense online, so really no one knows what the motive behind this ban really was. I'm sure it can't really be because he went on another show because that is so absurd, but honestly, we may never know. And finally, at number 1, Gene Simmons. I think that we can all agree that Gene Simmons is somewhat outlandish. He's a guy with a lot of big energy and no filter, so when it comes to interviewing him live, you never know what he might say, but you can certainly hope that it won't be too offensive. At one point, the singer was a Fox favorite, making regular appearances on their programming where they would discuss hot topics in the world and would share their opinions on things. They liked the guy and they liked having him on their talk show, but after causing a stir during a meeting at Fox and making some crude comments towards some of the other staff members, Gene got banned for life, and it was a hot topic of its own. Some of the things that Gene said to some of the women at the network got leaked, and it's not something that you would want to have said to you, let's just put it that way. After all that went down, the singer was not welcome back on their programming, and honestly, I can't say I blame them. At number 10, Charles Rocket. Between 1980 and 1981, SNL seemed to be on its last legs. This all came about after there were some changes in staff, and Gene Dumanian was promoted to executive producer of SNL after Lorne Michaels decided to take a break from the show. Because of this seemingly controversial change, much of the original cast of the show left, leaving Gene to rehire a brand new cast. This gave people new opportunities, but also made others lose everything that they worked for. Comedian Charles Rocket was one cast member who had their career destroyed on the show after he dropped an F-bomb during a skit. The comedian was closing out the show when he spoke some adult language, and since that is a huge no-no, it got him reprimanded and caused him as well as a handful of others to get fired. So not only did he destroy his career, but other members of the cast seemingly met that same fate. At number 9, Jimmy Fallon. Last year, people were canceling celebrities left, right, and center for a bunch of different things. We had Ellen and her backstage drama, we had Lea Michele and her Hollywood mean streak, and we also had Jimmy Fallon because after a clip of the late night host in blackface resurfaced on the internet, the fiery hordes of Twitter came looking for vengeance. The clip in question came from a bit that Jimmy was doing as an impersonation of Chris Rock back in 2000. Because this all came about during the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement last summer, people were extra mad at Jimmy, and some thought that his career was over after this. But much like many other scandals online, this all blew over after Jimmy issued an apology and took accountability for his actions. Do you guys remember this scandal, and do you think that his career should have been over after this? Let me know your thoughts down below. At number 8, Jenny Slate. Imagine the worst first day you've ever had. Now after I tell you about Jenny Slate's first day on SNL, I want you to see if your first day is as bad as hers, because Jenny's first day ended her career before it really got a chance to start. Though she's successful now, her career had been delayed for a bit after she goofed up on SNL on her first night as a cast member. Back in 2009, Jenny got the chance to perform one of the sketches that she wrote called Biker Chit Chat. She knew the bit like the back of her hand, or at least she thought she did, because when she went to say one of her lines, she made it a little more adult by accidentally switching up one of the words and dropping an F-bomb in its place. We all know that on network television, and especially on shows like this, having adult dialogue is a serious no-no, and so when Jenny dropped that big ol' F, it was not good for her at all. After that night, Jenny struggled to fit the show's vibe, at least that's what she claimed to say. The F-bomb combined with some other behind-the-scenes stuff caused her to get fired from one of the most famous shows on TV, and that definitely held her back in comedy for a little bit, but clearly not forever. At number 7, David Letterman. When celebrities get exposed for some type of scandal, it's a big deal, and it can be career-altering, so when David Letterman exposed his own cheating cheating scandal on his late night talk show, things were serious, and some didn't know if he would ever bounce back from this bombshell. In October 2009, on his late night talk show, David Letterman exposed his affair and revealed to the public that he had been intimately involved with someone from the studio. He also revealed that the reason why he was publicly addressing his affair was because someone was threatening to blackmail him for $2 million. He then told his audience about the mysterious package he found in his car one day and how his blackmailer had demanded to be paid off in order to keep this information from the public and from his wife. Rather than pay up, he owned up to his actions, but this was still a big deal because it was revealed that his mistress actually worked for him. Because this was a huge story, some wondered what it meant for the future of Letterman's show and career, but after some scrutiny, he was able to stay afloat for a little longer. It didn't destroy him, but it almost did. At number 6, Gene Simmons. I think we can all agree that Gene Simmons is somewhat of an outlandish guy. He's a guy with a lot of energy and no filter, so when it comes to sitting down with him live, you never know what he might say, but you can only hope that it won't be too offensive. At one point, the singer was a Fox favorite, making regular appearances on their programming where they would discuss hot topics in the world and would share their opinions on things. They liked the guy and liked having him on their talk show, but after causing a stir during a meeting at Fox and making crude comments towards some of the other staff members, Gene got banned for life, and it was a hot topic of its own. Some of the things that Gene said to some of the women at the network got leaked, and it's not nice at all. In this day and age, making comments like that is sure to get you in some serious trouble, and for a celebrity, that is never good because that can cost you your entire career. At number 5, Adrien Brody. Adrien Brody is a super successful actor, but after a scandal while hosting Saturday Night Live in 2003, there could have been a chance that his career would have been well and truly over. Back then, cancel culture wasn't yet a thing, but if it was, Adrien would have had his own over party trending on Twitter. When hosting SNL, the person tasked with being the host that evening is responsible for introducing the musical guest for that evening. On the night that Adrien was hosting, the musical guest happened to be Sean Paul, and Adrien saw this as a perfect opportunity to introduce Sean in an interesting way, to say the least. When it came down to introducing Sean's performance, Adrien came out dressed in fake dreadlocks and sporting a Jamaican accent. His bit was called out and was seen as very offensive and uncalled for as he went off script to do this bit, which no one found funny in the slightest. Because this was such an epic and controversial fail, the actor was subsequently banned from coming back on the show. He faced a lot of backlash that for his image for a while, but clearly he's bounced back since then. At number 4, Ashlee Simpson. This was the moment that caused Ashlee Simpson's career to crumble, and things haven't been the same since. I'm sure you all know the story about how Ashlee was caught lip-syncing during her SNL performance and how embarrassing it was. This was a defining moment for Ashlee because she was supposed to be getting her name out there to gain more notoriety and to grow her music career, but after this slip up on the show, Ashlee's name has been associated more with SNL fails than with the music industry, which is pretty unfair since she still brushed herself off after that incident and continued forward. Yes, this appearance pretty much destroyed her career, but she didn't let that stop her, which is good. At number 3, Chris Brown. Chris Brown seems to have gone on a journey to turn his life around after the incident that happened between him and Rihanna in 2009. After that moment, the public saw him very differently, and the singer was left picking up the pieces of his broken career. Things were rough for him in the years following the incident because the media labeled him as hot-headed, and this wasn't a good look for him, especially when he acted on said hot-headedness. In 2011, 2 years after the Rihanna incident, Chris Brown was a guest on Good Morning America and sat down with Robin Roberts for an interview to discuss his new album and to perform a song from said album. The interview and performance went sort of according to plan, but during his time on camera, you could see Chris getting angry after Robin kept asking about his altercation with Rihanna. Chris kept trying to get her back on the topic of the album, but it didn't really work and he got really upset. As soon as the interview and performance were over, Chris stormed off the stage, took his shirt off, and threw a chair at a window, causing it to shatter and rain glass onto the street below. This interview made Chris look even worse in the eyes of the public, and it continued to affect his career negatively. At number 2, T.I. Back in November of 2019, rapper T.I. was a guest on a talk show podcast called Ladies Like Us podcast. Here, the rapper opened up about his daughter, his relationship to her, and how he monitors his daughter's virginity. Yes, you heard that right. The rapper opened up about how he takes his daughter to a yearly gyno appointment to, quote, make sure her hymen is still intact, end quote. A woman's hymen is commonly associated with her virginity, even though there are many other ways it can be broken other than sex, but clearly T.I. didn't know that, and after telling a large audience about how he's so concerned about his daughter's purity, he faced a lot of backlash and was canceled for a bit. Going more in depth into how these appointments go down, the rapper told the podcast audience that he had to fight the doctor to get his daughter's results, results because it was private information, but even after all of that drama wanting to make sure that things were to his standard, T.I. later went on to comment on people who haven't been intimate, saying, quote, "Who wants a virgin? Like really, all that work." And finally at number 1, Kathie Gifford. Sometimes when celebrities are being interviewed, their words can become a topic of debate and they can even get cancelled for it. But here's a case where the person interviewing came under fire and it seriously affected their career and how people viewed them. Kathie Gifford, best known for her time on Live with Regis and Kathie Lee, faced a lot of backlash after her Today Show interview with Martin Short caused quite a stir. Back in 2012, Martin sat down for an interview with Kathie to discuss his role in the film Madagascar 3, and during the interview, Kathie kept asking Martin about his wife. What she didn't realize at the time was the fact that his wife Nancy had actually passed away 2 years earlier after a battle with ovarian cancer. The interview was super cringe because you could tell that with every question about his wife, Kathie struck a nerve, but she did learn about her mistakes afterwards as Martin informed her of his wife's passing backstage. Kathie's comments were seen as insensitive by a lot of people, and even though she says it was an honest mistake, we already know that the public and cancel culture don't really care about that. At number 10, Mark Summers. When it comes to talk shows, sometimes you can never predict what's going to happen. These shows are often used to catch up with a celebrity and just talk about life and whatnot, but sometimes these conversations can turn into brawls when the wrong thing is said, and this is pretty much what happened between Burt Reynolds and Mark Summers in 1994 when they were both guests on Jay Leno's talk show. The two men got into a pretty heated brawl after some jokes were made that rubbed them the wrong way. Essentially, Mark Summers made a comment about how he was still married while Burt at the time was going through a divorce, and it made him pretty upset. In retaliation, Burt threw some water at Mark, and that's what sparked the fight. It gets to the point where Jay Leno just can't keep the show together because his guests were fighting so much, and producers went so far as to bring out pies for Mark and Burt to make it look like this fight was staged. After this, people got talking, and some people came to the conclusion that this brawl was uncalled for, and since Mark technically started it, he felt the most backlash. Soon fans started to notice that Mark just wasn't making it big in Hollywood anymore, and some believe that this bad press that came from this fight is what caused Mark's career to suffer. At number 9, Tom Cruise. Now I know you guys are going to come for me in the comments saying, "Brie, Tom Cruise's career isn't destroyed, he's doing just fine." Yes, I know that. However, his career and public image did take a beating after his interview with Matt Lauer in 2005, where he made comments about mental health, psychiatry, and for his criticisms of actress Brooke Shields. All of this was caused by Tom's belief in Scientology and the fact that he doesn't believe in medication or therapy. While on the Today Show, Tom and Matt had the discussion about how the actor criticized Brooke Shields for taking antidepressants for her postpartum depression, and he tried to shut down anything that Matt would say to defend psychiatry, also going on to say, quote, "You don't know the history of psychiatry, I do," end quote. Between that and his stance on Scientology, he lost a lot of popularity, leading to some box office bombs that affected his career. At number 8, Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen was riding a pretty good wave back when he was the star of 2.5 Men, but after doing an interview on 2020, things took a turn and his career pretty much got destroyed. Everything sort of came crashing down for him after that interview, where he ranted about the 2.5 Men creator Chuck Lorre. This interview was pretty chaotic and all over the place, with Charlie waving his hands about frantically and even going so far as to call Chuck a turd and a clown. This became a media feeding frenzy as they labeled him as crazy, and they just pushed him to his breaking point. As a result of some of the comments Charlie made during the interview, he was fired from 2.5 Men, and that was a pretty big deal since he had been pulling in about $1 million per episode. The actor pretty much hit rock bottom after that, making this a lesson to remind you to watch what you say. At number 7, Wilmer Valderrama. When that 70s show actor Wilmer Valderrama was a guest on Howard Stern's show back in 2006, he had the potential to use the experience to his advantage and help his career, but instead he did the opposite and caused some damage instead. While on the show, the actor shared a little too much information with Stern and exposed a lot of the details about people he had slept with. Wilmer revealed that he had slept with Mandy Moore and even described the experience even though no one asked for that. He also rated his relationship with actress Jennifer Love Hewitt even though, once again, nobody asked. Wilmer really just exposed a lot of personal information about himself, but faced scrutiny because of how the people he talked about were impacted. A lot of people said that the comments he made were uncalled for, uncomfortable, and inappropriate. Years later, in 2010, the actor apologized for what he said during the interview, but the damage was already done. His career wasn't the same, and the people he slept with were pretty mad about having their business exposed like that too. At number 6, Addison Rae. Back in April of this year, TikTok star Addison Rae faced backlash after her appearance on The Tonight Show. The influencer was invited on the show to perform a handful of viral TikTok dances, and though it seemed innocent and unproblematic, this is the internet and there is always a problem. Addison, as well as Jimmy Fallon, started facing backlash because no credit was given to the people who created the dances that Addison performed. A lot of people watched this bit on the show and thought that it wasn't fair that Addison got to come on to the show and essentially take credit for the work of other TikTok creators, and so fans took to the internet to advocate for those who lost out on the notoriety of their dances. The Tonight Show producers, as well as Fallon himself, recognized that they deserved to have their voices heard, and so they got their opportunity, but for Addison Rae, this bad publicity just hurt her public image for a while. But honestly, this isn't anything new because these TikTokers are always getting into some kind of mess anyway. On number 5, Trisha Paytas. Trisha Paytas seems to be in some kind of drama or controversy every couple of months. Most recently, the YouTuber was caught in some drama with their former podcast co-host, Ethan Klein. The pair had a podcast called Frenemies, and honestly, the title said it all. They had beef in the past and decided to make a podcast out of it, so really the whole thing was doomed from the start. But I digress. Basically, they got into yet another fight, and Trisha decided that they needed to quit the podcast. After leaving, the quote-unquote truth started to come out about the behind-the-scenes drama regarding the podcast. Most of the conflict had to do with money and how much each person contributed to the show and whatnot. But this debate got heated, exposed videos were made, and talk show careers came to an end. Even though their career isn't completely destroyed simply because Trisha won't let it die, it wasn't good for their image or credibility, but honestly, things are always rocky with Trisha, so even if we think that their career is over, they won't think so. At number 4, Wendy Williams. With the drama surrounding Britney Spears and her conservatorship, everyone seems to want to put their 2 cents in and contribute to the conversation, and the criticisms being thrown towards Britney's family, especially her father. Most of this criticism happens on the internet from Britney's fans, but talk show host Wendy Williams took things one step further and made her comments about the situation on air of her show. She was discussing Britney's ongoing court battle with the audience, and she made comments about how Britney's parents had the public fooled into thinking that they were doing what was best for the pop star. After learning more information as to what's really been going on in that situation, we know that things are much more rocky than we once thought, and because this is so unfair for Britney, this got Wendy pretty heated because she followed up her criticisms of the Spears family by saying, quote, "Death to all of them," end quote. This comment went a little too far for people's likings, and Wendy faced backlash for it. The comment had to be edited out of the show, and there were a handful of people demanding that Wendy apologize to Britney's family for what she said. Wendy ended up getting a lot of bad press for weeks following the incident, and as we all know by now, for a celebrity, bad press is a very dangerous thing to have. At number 3, Sia. Grammy-winning artist Sia started facing pretty serious backlash following the release of her feature film Music, starring Maddie Ziegler. The film, which is about a young non-verbal girl on the autism spectrum, starred Maddie Ziegler as the film's protagonist, and even though Maddie has worked closely with Sia for many years, fans had to put their foot down and call the singer out on her casting choice. Because the role went to someone who wasn't on the autism spectrum, she started facing backlash. The singer got a chance to clear the air while doing a sit-down interview recently, but instead of owning up to everything and apologizing to fans, she instead doubled down, which really made things worse for her. While she understood the feelings of those who were angry with her, Sia defended her casting choice by saying, quote, "There's no way I could have used someone of Maddie's level of functioning to play her. I can't do a project without her," end quote. This interview, combined with her harsh defense of the film on Twitter, made for a storm of backlash, and things got so bad that she had to leave social media to avoid the scrutiny. While her career isn't necessarily over, she has lost a lot of popularity. At number 2, Mark Wahlberg. In 2013, while appearing as a guest on the Graham Norton Show, Mark Wahlberg caused quite a scene that greatly affected his public image. Essentially, Mark went through his entire guest appearance while severely under the influence, and he made quite a fool of himself. While on the show, Mark kept interrupting other guests, touching people, acting pretty disruptive, and even fell asleep on the couch. It became one interview that Graham wanted to forget because of how awkward and uncomfortable the entire experience was. This moment went down in TV history as one of the worst interviews ever simply because of how chaotic it was. In the aftermath of the whole ordeal, Mark's public image declined for a while because he made a fool of himself on TV, and not every fan is into that kind of behavior. And finally, at number 1, Joe Rogan. The pandemic and the COVID vaccines are still a very hot topic amongst many people. There are opinions from opposite sides of the spectrum, and many times uninformed people spread misinformation that can really hurt others. This is how Joe Rogan started facing backlash after he made some comments about the vaccines that were incredibly untrue and pretty damaging. On his podcast, Joe was talking about the COVID vaccines, and he made a comment saying that young people didn't need to get vaccinated, saying, quote, "If you're like 21 years old and you say to me, should I get vaccinated? I say no. If you're a healthy person and you're exercising all the time and you're young and you're eating well, I don't think you need to worry about this," end quote. His comments had to be fact-checked by one of the world's top doctors, where they went on to say that what Joe said was untrue and that no matter what your age or health status is, it's important to consider getting vaccinated if that's best for you. Because of what Joe said, he started facing backlash and people started calling him an anti-vaxxer. He had to set the record straight that he wasn't an anti-vaxxer, but people still don't believe him. In this day and age, your views on the pandemic and everything that comes with it can make or break you, so this backlash surely wasn't good for Joe. At number 10, Hugh Grant. You don't really hear too much about Hugh Grant these days, so when I found out that he was banned from somewhere, I was actually pretty shocked. He was banned from The Daily Show after having a really bad interview that affected the show's host. Jon Stewart, the former host of The Daily Show, said in an interview that Hugh Grant was the absolute worst guest he'd ever had on the show. He spoke about how when Hugh was on to promote his film Did You Hear About the Morgans, Hugh was making a huge scene backstage and was really mean and annoying to the people who were working on set. Apparently, Hugh was allegedly going around saying that he had better places to be. He also got really upset about the clip that they played from the film, saying, quote, "What is that clip? It is a terrible clip." To which Jon replied, telling Hugh to make a better movie. You could really tell that Jon was fed up with Hugh and his attitude on the show. Jon went on to say that because of his poor experience with Hugh, he would never have him back on his show. At number 9, Kathie Gifford. Kathie Gifford is known for being pretty outspoken and controversial at times, and it's because of her antics that she's been banned from just about every talk show. Because of her unpredictable actions, use of crude language, and her problematic past, she isn't welcome on shows like The View, The Today Show, Ellen, Regis and Kelly, Jay Leno, Letterman, and many, many others. She's racked up a lot of these bans over the years, but some new ones, like being fired from CNN, come from the backlash that she gained after the Donald Trump incident where she posed with a fake bloodied model of Donald Trump's head. She's been known to ruffle people's feathers on live TV and pull stunts that are inappropriate for broadcast. For example, during her time hosting the New Year's Eve special with Anderson Cooper on CNN, she used profanity and even removed some of her clothing on TV. On top of that, she's offended people during award shows while making speeches and making inappropriate comments. Though she's been banned from certain TV shows, I really think that people just want her banned from the media in general because of her actions. At number 8, Korine. I think it's common knowledge, at least to most people, that when you're a guest somewhere, you should try and be on your best behavior. Most people follow this unspoken rule, but many others don't, especially celebrities, as we will see throughout this list. One person who really should have tried to behave themselves is director Harmony Korine, who's best known for the movie Spring Breakers. There was once a time when Harmony made a number of appearances on The Late Show with David Letterman in the mid to late 90s. This was also during a time when Harmony was reportedly on a lot of drugs. Though he was a frequent guest on the show, his appearances just stopped all of a sudden, and no one really knew why until 2013 when Letterman revealed the truth as to why the director was banned from coming on the show. Apparently, Letterman caught the director going through Meryl Streep's purse one time, and that was just the last straw for the late night host. When talking about this fateful event, Letterman said, quote, "I went upstairs to greet Meryl Streep and welcome her to the show. I knocked on the door and she wasn't there. I looked around and found Harmony going through her purse. True story. And so I said, that's it, put her things back in her bag and then get out," end quote. After that, Harmony was no longer welcome on the show and has not been back since. At number 7, Bobcat Goldthwait. I think that this goes without saying, but don't go setting fire to random things. I know Adele said set fire to the rain, but that was just a metaphor. Clearly though, one guest on Jay Leno didn't quite get the memo because they ended up setting a fire during their interview on The Late Night Show. Back in 1994, actor Bobcat Goldthwait was a guest on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and during his guest appearance, the actor decided to randomly set fire to his chair. At the time, Jay thought that this was just a spontaneous bit, but in reality, Bobcat came prepared for this as he brought lighter fluid and a lighter that was hidden up his sleeve. Luckily, the other guest who was there that night, Lauren Hutton, was quick on her feet and doused the flames with a cup of water. Jay, understandably, was very unhappy with all this and banned Bobcat from the show. Not only that, but the actor was also charged with arson for his stunt and was ordered to pay over $3,300 in fines, some of which went towards replacing the chair that he set fire to. Not too sure why he decided to make this interview go up in flames like that, but at least he won't be able to pull that stunt again. At least not with Jay. At number 6, Dax Shepard. Actor and comedian Dax Shepard has been very open about his struggles with substance abuse for some time now. He's opened up about some of the lowest points in his career that was caused by his substance abuse, including one time that got him banned from a late night show. Dax told a story about how he was once preparing to be on Late Night with Conan O'Brien in 2004, but when he was doing the pre-interview, he blacked out. Dax didn't remember any of the pre-interview where he was supposed to go over the talking points for the evening, and by the time his real interview started, he was so lost. He went into detail saying, quote, "I show up on the show and I don't know what he's talking about. I can tell he's queuing me up for stories I've told, but I don't know any of the stories." End quote. Because of how badly he messed up his interview, he was banned from the show for a few years until he got sober. Years later, he was welcomed back on the show and all was forgiven, but it was still a low point for the actor. At number 5, Jay Leno. This next ban was caused by one serious feud between Jay Leno and Conan O'Brien. Because both men were talented late night hosts, there were a lot of pitches from different networks trying to poach one or the other to take over talk shows and whatnot. Well, things got kind of heated when Conan was promised the hosting gig for The Tonight Show when Jay's contract was up. As you would imagine, Jay didn't take the news very well, and so he decided to start his own show, The Jay Leno Show, which aired before Conan's. Well, when neither of their shows were bringing in good ratings, the network reshuffled the time slots, gave Conan's slot to Jay, and bumped Conan's show back half an hour. Conan didn't like that, took a payout, and The Tonight Show fell back into Jay's hands. Later on, when asked if he would have Jay on an episode of his show, Conan shut that down, essentially saying that Jay would have been banned from his program. There was just a lot of bitterness between them, and the water under that bridge has certainly dried up. At number 4, Gary Busey. A lot of people enjoy their personal space. I know that there are many people who love getting close to others and who are very physical people, but you know, not everybody likes that. Getting upset when someone invades your personal space without permission is pretty understandable, and this notion is what got Gary Busey banned from the Howard Stern Show. Back in 2001, actor Gary Busey was on the Howard Stern Show and seemed to have ignored the notion of personal space, and that rubbed Howard the wrong way. While on the show, the actor picked up Howard's co-host, Robin Quivers, giving him a big bear hug, and even chased Howard around the studio trying to wrestle him. Howard really didn't like what Gary was doing that day, and so he promptly banned him from coming back on the show. When Gary explained the motives behind his actions, he blamed it on his quote, 13 separate personalities. He continued to say that he was just really excitable that day, but that wasn't a good enough excuse to get him back onto the show until 2017, when he was invited to do an audio-only interview with Howard. At number 3, Howard Stern. But speaking of Howard Stern, he himself has been banned from a late night show. Apparently, he and Jay Leno have had beef ever since Howard's 1995 appearance on The Tonight Show. This appearance was pretty chaotic. Howard entered onto the show with 2 women in bikinis and prompted the women to start kissing each other on air. On top of that, Howard kept speaking over Jay and other guests while on the show as well. Jay was apparently so fed up with Howard and his antics that he nearly walked off set, and was so mad about the way that the show turned out that evening that he later called into Howard's show to say that he had, quote, gone beyond the acceptable standards. After that, Howard was banned, and he and Jay have had beef ever since. At number 2, Donald Trump. Now, to find out that Donald Trump has been banned from any kind of talk show really isn't all that surprising. So many hosts from various shows have banned the former president, but this next ban is a little juicier because it kind of involves some beef between the Donald and late night host Seth Meyers. In 2016, the late night talk show host issued a ban against Donald Trump in retaliation for Trump having revoked Seth's Washington Post credentials. Though it was an official ban, it was also done as a joke since Seth already knew that Donald would never be on a show anyway, but it was about the principle. In a joke statement to Donald, Seth said, quote, "We instituted this ban despite the fact that he's never been here or asked to be here or would never be caught dead here. I just think that it takes an amazing amount of courage on our part. So the ball is in your court, Donald. Either rescind your Washington Post ban or you're not allowed to appear on the show you have no interest in appearing on. Although maybe now that you can't have it, you're changing your mind." End quote. And finally, at number 1, Oprah Winfrey. This last ban seems to have been more so self-imposed. After making an appearance on David Letterman's show in 1989, Oprah Winfrey issued a self-imposed ban, refusing to go back on Letterman's show. After what she experienced on the show, Oprah and Letterman seem to have had some kind of feud going on, though it was more low-key than others. As for what happened to cause this self-imposed ban, well, Oprah finally opened up about the event that caused this back in 2013, saying, quote, "It was a terrible experience for me. The guy in the audience started yelling, 'Get her, Dave.' You were sort of baiting the audience and there were a bunch of drunk guys down the front. I was trying to mitigate the whole thing. It felt so uncomfortable for me. I didn't want to have that experience again." End quote. Basically, she was just really uncomfortable on the show and wanted to forget about the event, hence her minor beef with the late night host, and she just didn't want a repeat of that unpleasant experience.